Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's another excited moment to be together to analyze the stakes, especially concerning the African Union. Today, we are focusing on the pending 35th, 37th, I beg your pardon, AU summit that will be holding in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. That's the headquarters of the African Union. It should be noticed that heads of state and government will be meeting in Addis Ababa for the 37th summit, AU summit, the year 2024, where these leaders from across Africa converge to discuss pressing issues in the region. This year's summit hones in on crucial themes, advocating for education as a vital investment to catalyze socioeconomic development across Africa. And we know to meet these objectives, Africa needs to address itself with the evolving world and redefine its strategic development preamble. We are focusing here on Africa's Agenda 2063. So, thus, this will actually ensure inclusive, transparent, and mutually beneficial partnership, especially with international allies, and also a key to enriching Africa's engagement on the global stage and advancing its development agenda. And today we are looking at the very important topic of focusing on peace, integration, development, and others, including education, asking the question if this a path forward for the continent Africa. Join us as we actually dive into this thought-provoking discussion this day to explore innovative solutions analysis that could shape the continent Africa, like the topic underlines the 37th AU Summit zooms on peace, integration, development, and others, asking the question a pathway forward for the continent Africa. I want to appreciate you all for taking this rendezvous with us to analyze the pending African Union Summit 2024. So we're going to proceed to have this report presented to us by Njix Nabisi, focusing on the this year summit of the African Union. I'll join you right after that report.
The Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa hoping will summit from the 17th to 18th of February 2024. According to AU Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamad, regional integration and maintaining momentum in addressing issues of integration, peace and security, and the developments of the continents are high on the agenda. But in an ironic twist, the host of the summit has either initiated or been involved in multiple conflicts in the last 3 years, as Ethiopia's recently ended 2-year civil war with the state of Tigray, which ended in November 2022 after a Pretoria pact, but yet federal troops are currently upping drone strikes against rebels known as Fano military in the state of Amhara, next though to Tigray. Still within the Horn of African sub-region, Addis Ababa relations with neighboring Somalia are frosty after Abiy's government announced a port deal this January with the autonomous region of Somaliland in return for recognition of its statehood, a development that has immensely angered Somalia. The AU chairperson, while addressing a pre-summit session of the AU's Permanent Representatives Committee PRC, stressing the importance of continent-wide solidarity and unity, cited conflicts in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo, noting that these conflicts are compounded with a fragile global situation. While reiterating this year's theme, Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st Century, Ambassador Yusuf Assoumani, permanent representative of the Union of Comoros to the African Union, made a call for togetherness to achieve global peace and solidarity.
achieving global peace and solidarity, and of course, achieving that peace in Africa to ensure total integration and development, among other things. We'll go right away to uncover the panel to discuss this very important topic with us. And I'm taking you to Canada. Let's meet Dr. Elijah ENOAKU, who is joining us today, Director of the Center on African Development. Hello to you, Dr. ENOAKU. It's a pleasure having you again on the Pan-African television.
Thank you, Clarice. Thank you for having me one more time, and appreciate being here to discuss this important topic about the African Union, and hopefully we'll be able to have a fruitful discussion about what is happening on our beautiful continent. Thank you for having me one more time.
It's always a pleasure having you to share insight on topical issues concerning Africa and the world at large. Now let's move to India. We're being joined by Professor JAGDISH KHATRI in his capacity as author, speaker, and also global analyst. Welcome to you, sir, and it's a pleasure having you this day on For You Media Africa.
Hello. Namaskar. Thank you for this invitation. It's always a privilege for me to talk about Africa. Although I'm not an expert on Africa, or neither I belong to Africa, but I'm a ardent well-wisher of Africa, which I consider as the continent of the future. So looking forward to great learning in this session.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for accepting, of course, to share another perspective, not an expert on African affairs, but of course, being a global analyst, be abreast with the changing dynamics that are occurring across the global world. And we're looking at how Africa can redefine itself at the central stage. We are going to dive straight away into the practical analysis. Dr. Elijah ENOAKU, we are zooming on the pending 37th summit, AU summit that will be holding in Ethiopia at this Ababa. And today we look at peace, integration, development. These are keywords, and education. These are keywords that actually define this year's AU summit. So what analysis can you give pertaining the decision to accentuate on this very important statement or words regarding the development in Africa since 2020 till now?
I think the terms are quite coined. They are coined in respect to what's happening in Africa. So indeed, they are in place. I do not see any contradiction in what they have coined and what they are planning to do and what the agenda is. Mm-hmm. But permit me to take a step back and lay a groundwork for some of these things that we are discussing about, so that when we are analyzing where we are going and where we are along the journey, we can accentuate and be able to encapsulate exactly what direction we are taking in Africa, what direction we are missing, what direction we are going, or an evaluation of how far we've gone this far, to be able to understand if this terms, this conference, this agenda meets what we have been anticipating for. Yes, there is no continent or there's no country in the world that's going to develop in war. So peace is in place. Integration. There is no continent or people in the world that are going to develop in fragmentation. That's in place. Development. There's no continent or country that is going to develop without a development agenda. Education. There's no continent or people in the world that are going to develop without appropriate education. So all those are in place. But now, let's take a step back, because on this program, other programs all over Africa, people have been talking about this for years. You remember the agenda that the African Union came up about stopping gun smoking. I think it was 2020.
2020,
if I remember the year very
indeed,
well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure.
So in terms of the first agenda on the summit, which is peace, the African Union, they are supposed to take a step back and evaluate and say, okay, we came up with an agenda for guns, to stopping gun smoking in 2020. What happened to it? Because that is my number one problem with African Union Clarice. For some of us who are doing this analysis and doing this research, and we submit data that shows failures and things that are supposed to be done, year after year in our offices, we still get people asking the question, this is what we need to do. But there is not taking stock and evaluation on what went wrong on what we had planned. If you look at the agenda of stopping guns blazing, smoking in 2020, what went wrong? I am still searching. Maybe it exists out there. I have not seen a report from the African Union on what is it that went wrong, that the agenda of stopping gun from smoking in 2020 went wrong. What failed? What did they do wrong? What didn't work? Who was the agenda? Who was the architecture? Who was the perpetrator? Who did not come to the table? What peace initiative did they initiate, and why did it fail? That kind of evaluation, which I expect from the leadership of African Union, I am not seeing it. So as I said, I am still waiting to see an evaluation sheet of how this agenda failed. Because as we speak, it failed. From every metric that you can use to measure, as we speak, 37% of Africa is in war. 37% of the continent of Africa is in war. That's the statistic that anybody can go to the United Nations Development Index office and check. It is there all over the world. Look at the international groups, international organizations. They have the research. It's there. 37% of Africa is still in war as we speak. Nobody is going to develop in war. It is going to be extremely difficult for any country to develop in war. Number two, after saying that they are talking about peace, good.
Sure.
I'll talk about what they have done and what they failed to do. Now we talk about development and integration. Before we even talk about development, they talk about the integration. The Abuja Accord of the Agenda 2063. When you have an agenda, Clarice, it's just like a state budget. When the state has a budget and they vote on that budget, in the course of the year, the members of parliament are supposed to present an evaluation and execution to different committees within the parliamentary bodies for them to examine, is this budget that we put in place, how is it being executed? At what stage are we? What is failing? What is going wrong? So far, the Agenda 2063, the main 17 pillars of that agenda, I am yet, maybe again, as I say, maybe it exists out there, but I'm yet to see concrete action on the ground in terms of the implementation of the Agenda 2063, because that is what they're talking about when it talks about integration. That is exactly what they are trying to say. But where is the concrete action on the ground that says that, okay, so far we have the African Development Bank. I'm not talking about the current African Development Bank. The current African Development Bank, private initiative owned by Europeans. That's not what I'm talking about. African Central Bank. Where is it? Now, removing of this custom borders, that is harmonization of the custom borders within the African Union. Where is it? They're talking about, time will fail me to start going one by one. So what I'm saying here is that we expect the African Union to tell the Africans, where are you in whatever agenda you have, whether it is integration, whether it's development, whether it's education, whether it is peace, what is going right and what is going wrong, and why is it going wrong, and what can be done as a remediation. These are some of the things that we want to hear from them in these conferences. I don't want people going to just saying, the agenda for this year is peace, integration, development. So what? We have been singing this for a long time. What is it that is not working, and what is it that is working? So that's what I expect from these conferences, just to set the tone around.
Of course, a lot to be discussed. I'll be coming subsequently for us to better understand the stakes as far as the African Union is concerned, and also activities pertaining the African continent. And that's why in the preamble we highlighted that though Africa had defined its agenda, development agenda 2063, the world is gradually evolving and a lot of changes have actually happened, and how strategic leaders, political leaders, economic leaders, and other stakeholders are focused on taking the changes that are happening in the global world to ensure that the African Union, Africa's number one institution, meets the set objective of peace, integration, development, and of course, a safe Africa for all. Coming to you, Dr. KHATRI Jagdish, we'll be looking at the Africa of today and engagement with the rest of the world. Now we're looking at the diplomatic engagement. From your perspective as a global analyst, you know, recently the African countries and the African Union have made milestones trying to make known their names at the international arena. We know of the G20 and of course and other bodies, and even in individual nations that have been highlighting and fostering more cooperation with the African continent. So now we look at how, with what is happening presently in Africa, how the continent can use its diplomatic engagement with these nations to meet set goals.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Elijah has made a nice start to the discussion, and I would like to proceed further to taking the overall global view. As we all agree, the global geopolitical landscape is under huge transformation. But this transformation process is going through the various stages of turmoil and turbulence in practically almost all the fields: social, political, economic, technological, environmental. So in this scenario, as management jargon is, we are passing through a VUCA world, VUCA, that stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So things are just churning out, and the world has perpetual phase of crisis, one after another, due to COVID pandemic and the senseless wars going on, conflicts going on in several parts of the world, economic recession looming, mistrust over there. So these things are happening. And there's a crisis of leadership. We are not able to solve the problems. And while this is happening, that the multilateralism is slowly and steadily taking place. And there's an opportunity for new players in the global arena to stake their claim. And I think with 1.3 billion population of the world, around 16% or 1/6 population of the world, and with a continent much bigger than the China plus India plus USA plus Japan plus whole of Europe, with such a landmass, Africa needs to stake its claim for a rightful place in the Committee of Nations. And this is the right opportunity. And with the support of India, we have seen in recent G20 meetings in India, India pushed the agenda for inclusion of African Union into the G20 decision-making body. So it is an opportunity for Africa to shake up, and also opportunity for the world to wake up to the immense untapped potential that is offered by Africa, both in terms of production, or consumption, or material resources, or human resources. So that is my initial point. seeing the global point of view, that we are optimistic about Africa taking up the challenge of seizing this opportunity of
Indeed.
coming into the world arena. Thank you.
Most definitely, Africa is the future. We proceed with you, Dr. Elijah ENOAKU. Listening to you, Candy, you highlighted one very important aspect. In 2020, the continent was actually excited to see that they can stop the illegal circulation of small arms across the continent. But according to reports and from what we've seen from the year 2020 till date, we noticed that the continent has witnessed a hike in crisis, and that's where the problematic lies, actually impeding the leaders' efforts towards attaining well-defined objectives, as you've heard, underlining that Africa cannot actually work alone. It is imperative to work together with other stakeholders, other partners, to be able to put an end to the crisis hindering development in the continent. So now the question is, how can African countries, to ensure integration in whatever way, political integration and economic integration? Do you see the possibility of this, given the diverse nature of the continent? Do you see maybe some leaders trying to reduce the autonomy, especially political autonomies that they have regarding their respective nations, with the same goal of ensuring that integration in Africa is actually feasible or a reality?
Oh, yes, that's very, very possible. First of all, um, I want to thank India for fighting for Africa to be included into the G20, even though Africa is not a country. G20 is a group of nations. But we do know that the European Union is a non-member nation, a non-nation member. So Africa did qualify as well, but India did fight, and so we appreciate what India did to get Africa as part of the G20. Now, to answer your question, the integration, I want to clear the integration that we're talking about Africa, it's not a fusion of states
Sure.
to form one conglomerate like Kwame Nkrumah advocated. That failed, and I think we are not going back to a fusion of states to form one common country. No, we are talking about a sort of a confederation or a conglomerate, if you like, where African countries are going to relinquish their trade policies, they are going to harmonize their custom policies, they are going to harmonize their trade policies, they're going to have a common free trade zone, they're going to have a common commodity strategy. This is one of the Agenda 2063. Common commodity strategy means every country in Africa are going to harmonize their commodity strategy in such a way that before, for example, cocoa, before cocoa leaves Africa, that cocoa has been finished into grounded powder before it is being shipped into Europe. If possible, you can convert it into chocolate before you sell. Before timber leaves Africa, that timber would have been processed and converted into pulp before it is being sold. Before iron ore leaves Africa, that iron ore would have been converted into semi-finished iron before it is being shipped to out of the world. And the rest, and the rest, and the rest continue. So that is their commodity strategy. And the list continues. So it is a harmonization of trade policies within the African countries in such a way that Nigeria is not having a different trading policy with the rest of the world, and Cameroon is not having a different trade policy with the rest of the world, and Congo is having a different trade policy. No, they trade as one full trade partner, just as have the European Union. France has not ceased to exist because of the European Union. Neither has Belgium ceased to exist because of the European Union. Neither has Denmark ceased to exist because of the European Union. But they have a common trading bloc and a common agenda. in such a way that you do not need a visa to move from Europe, from Germany to France. You don't need a visa to move from France. So there is common movement of people and goods, and they trade as a block. They trade as a block, and that trading as a block gives them economic power, gives them political power, gives them the selling power, gives them the a lot of power that a single country would not be able to achieve. That is what the African Union is asking for. So it is very, very, to answer your question, yes, it is very, very possible for Africa to do this. And the more, like my colleague from India already mentioned, we are talking about 1.3 billion people. This is a juggernaut of an industry. This is a juggernaut of a political power, an economic power. Not only that, something that I always mention for people to understand. We are also talking about a monetary policy because you have the euro, that is the economic, the monetary policy of the European Union. If Africa has its own currency, this is what is going to happen to Paris. Number one, that currency is going to be backed by the gold, which is the golden standard of a currency that backs a lot of currency. If you look at the European Union, you look at what they produce, they do not have the gold. They do not have what it means to back the currency. Where do they get that from? They take it from Africa. So, but Africa has everything it takes to have a standard economy, standard monetary policy, standard economic policy, standard political policy that is backed by the resources that they have. So integration is very, very possible. It's not difficult to have integration within African countries.
Actually, yeah, it is very possible, but then the underlining fact is why it is not yet a reality in the present society. Talking about Africa actually coming together with one economic voice, and of course, in the same perspective, Professor Jagdish, now we're looking at the endowment of the African continent and how what Africa stands to give to the global world. While talking, Dr. Elijah highlighted that if Africa can have one financial system or monetary policy that will help fast track economic growth. You know, it's often said that what holds an economy, a nation, it's its economy. So now let's bring in. Actually, I want us to look at it from maybe a multilateral point of view. We are bringing in the BRICS and, of course, Africa. Do you think with all of this quest for peace, integration, development across Africa, do you see the BRICS as a potential partner to ensuring that Africa has especially a strong economic prowess that can take economic decisions even to favor also the continent Africa?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Elijah for raising some very valid points which must be listened to by African leaders and implemented.
Sure.
Like what is happening is that the world is fragmenting into now blocks, and the future competition will not be between countries. It will be between blocks, European Union, ASEAN, or a SARC or BRICS. And the way, and similarly, if African Union can come as a block of 57 member states, as a one continent, one block, as Dr. Elijah suggested, then it has all the possibility of competing. And BRICS is something that has attracted the attention of so many other countries also, and few countries have been added also, and there are more in pipeline.
Sure.
So that shows the voice of global South is being raised, and has become almost the voice of global South, and with as I would say that with support from India, it is said that it is the age of AI. So I'm not talking about the artificial intelligence, but the future belongs to AI, that is Africa plus India. So AI should mean Africa and India together, and in with cooperation in several fields. So there is a strong possibility of Africa Union continent, competing at the world level with a strong self-belief. First of all, it has to believe in itself as not just 57 micro states, but as one continent, one people, raring to go with so much richness in minerals and like gold, diamond, platinum, uranium, cobalt, phosphate, manganese, and whatnot. So there is every possibility for uh, uh, yeah, African Union or Africa continent to talk to others in equal terms. But that requires capitalizing on its most important resource, that is its human resource.
Human resource, very important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
60% of its population is young,
indeed.
around less than 25 years of working age. And that is while the Europe, Australia, in America, they are aging. And this is an opportunity to upgrade our students and young youth so that they provide the future workforce for the whole world. And that should be the vision of African leaders to act upon, and that may help in bringing Africa to more prosperity. That is my viewpoint.
Let me stay with you, Professor Jagdish. You talked about actually investing in the most important resource, which is the human capital. So here I could say we are talking about capacity building, and of course collaborating with international organizations. We already mentioned BRICS and other individual nations collaborating with these organizations and countries, developed countries, to enhance the capacity building initiatives. We can also underline that India has a very strong relationship with the African continent. So faced with this plethora of challenges, especially in the 21st century, what models or parameters do you think can be adopted that will suit, of course, because when we are looking at the solutions for the problems the world is facing, it's also good to note that not all solutions are feasible in every environment. So here we're looking at where the solutions that are coming from the bilateral or multilateral engagement of African Union and other countries can bring to solve the problems of Africa, to ensure that this peace, integration, development, and all is a reality. So now we're looking at capacity building, transfer of knowledge and skills development program which can empower the actually the human capital in the African continent, focusing on the youth, the young people. In your perspective, what right parameters or models can be adopted globally? You just mentioned the artificial intelligence, and the AU team is focusing on education. So what can we do different from what we've been actually doing in the past or advocating in the past that have not materialized to yield the set objectives?
Thank you, man. Well, India has a lot to offer to
Please, I
African
can't hear
continent.
you. Can you unmute your mic, please?
Think,
Hello,
yeah.
Professor.
Hello. Are you able to listen to me?
We have difficulties getting to you, Professor. I think I will come back to you with this question. Let's ride on with you, Professor. Dr. Elijah ENOAKU. We are looking at capacity building, knowledge sharing, and we've identified the human resource of the African continent. What do you think is the place of the young people, the vibrant young people in Africa, in ensuring peace, integration, and development, and what role practically can they play to ensure that Africa is great?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Right on,
Good.
please.
Okay. I was saying that you see, the young people in Africa are very, very entrepreneurial. They're very, very entrepreneurial. And these people will go a long way, I'm telling you, because I see them when they leave the Western, they leave Africa and they come here. I work with some of them in our center, try to help them out, whether it's research, whether it's development, whether it's career, whether it's integration into the society where they really find themselves. I see them enterprise succeeding and excelling within a short while. So here is where the problem is. I think we discussed this on the show the other day, Clarice. When you take a young person out of Africa and put him here or her here, and the person is succeeding so well, you ask yourself, what was happening back home that this person couldn't succeed? One, the same resources that that person has here, he does not have them there. If you leave Africa, because you talk about transfer of knowledge and transfer of technology, we don't need to bring young people from Africa to the Western world here for them to learn the technology. We need to bring the technology from the Western world to Africa for them to learn it in place.
Indeed, yeah.
Again, let me repeat, we do not necessarily need to bring young people from Africa to the Western world for them to learn the technology and bring it back home. We should rather bring the technology back home and let them learn the technology in place and implement it to our local reality. Because technology is not something, it's not cut and nail, like we say. Mm-hmm. It is something that has to be implemented to the local realities.
Absolutely,
the technology could be working here. There could be some, there's some things that could work in the West that might not work. You mentioned that in the program, that might not work in Africa. But when those things are learned and established within the African context, it becomes a tool for development of Africa. I always love to bring up Rwanda here because that's a case study that anybody can go and look it up. We have young people in Rwanda that leave secondary school, vocational secondary school, and they're being, sent to the industries. We have cell phone companies, for example, that the president and the government have succeeded to negotiate, and they have their factories now producing cell phones in Africa. These cell phones are, they are customized for the African market, and they're customized for the African industry. They are customized for the African use. And these young people are excelling so much that you think that these are engineers that were trained in the Western world. No, they have been trained in place. So when it comes to transfer of technology, the African community or the African government policymakers need to make sure that they bring the technology home and let these people excel in that. It doesn't matter what it is. Because we were talking about a while ago, we were talking about some of the institutions that the African Union is supposed to implement in place that shows that their Agenda 2063 is actually, moving forward on the main business. If you look at some of those key institutions, they talk about the Pan-African Stock Exchange. Pan-African Stock Exchange. But up till now, there is nothing like a Pan-African Stock Exchange being discussed. You have Lagos Stock Exchange existing in isolation. There's nothing in the central CEMAC zone. They started something like all fizzled out. South Africa is running their own. Ethiopia. So there's no discussion about anything like that.
So what do you think, sorry to interject, what do you think is actually stopping the continent from attaining that milestone, from coming together under one banner for the purpose of ensuring this total transformation of the continent Africa?
Okay, let me tell you what needs to happen, Carrie, since you asked me that question. Mm-hmm. Here is the problem. When you have an organization that does not put caveats and restrictions and demands in place. For example, I'll give you an example of the European Union. When the European Union was established, they had a preamble and they had a set of guidelines and say, before, they still have up to today, before you qualify to be a member of the European Union, number one, you have to put your house in order. That's security. Indeed. Number two, corruption. Number two, business. Number four, they have a line of agreements and restrictions and guidelines on which for you to qualify to be a member, you have to meet. Ask the same question today. Where are those guidelines in the African Union? Any Tom, Dick, and Harry, it's a member of the African Union. It's a member. They are not forcing their members to toe the line. There is no guideline on when and date on when every member must have done this, every member must have done this, every member must have organized their custom unions, organized. There are only a few countries, for example, I think Kenya, recently, he did it on his own accord. He said 2024, Kenya is going to be visa-free for the rest of African countries. I think Rwanda did the same.
Yeah.
Why would it take an individual country to make such a decision instead of the African Union saying by let's say 2026, if you have not harmonized your integration policy and your passport system in such a way that you are making your country visa-free to all of African countries, you're being kicked out of the African Union. That's where the problem is. There are no penalties, there are no guidelines, there are no restrictions on who or what they're supposed to do. That's why they're taking a backseat. Anybody's doing something, and nobody seems to take the lead and say, hey, we need to put some restrictions and guidelines on when we want this achieved. For example, one of their flagship projects is to have the African Monetary Fund and the African Central Bank.
Absolutely, yeah.
As we speak today, the Naira has crashed.
Sure.
Naira has crashed, completely crashed. Imagine that there were some guidelines and some restrictions on how to put the economy in order so that they fit into what the African Union is supposed to achieve. And there's a deadline and say by 2030, every country has harmonized its monetary policy in such a way that you are going to belong to the African Central Bank and your monetary policy has to be A, B, C, D. All this will not be happening.
And do you think it's difficult for the African continent to take this very important decision because of the fact that it is not being the financing of the institution and other activities of maybe the external factors or parts, what is actually impeding or killing the internal prowess of leaders from taking these very concrete decisions?
Well, the professor from Kenya did mention about the importance of regional blocks.
Sure.
I don't doubt if the existence of external influences on those regional blocks, because if those regional blocks were working, those regional blocks will be in favor of a Central African monetary policy, a Central African framework, a Central African bank, a Central African stock exchange, but because of the interest that some of external powers are having on those regional blocks, whether you're talking about South African Development Corporation, you're talking about CEMAC, you're talking about ECOWAS and so on, we see a lot of strings being pulled. There's no doubt about that. But, Clarice, I've always said on many, many other TV programs, like if you as a man does not allow, if you're having a problem with your wife and your children, you don't allow strangers inside there, they will not come and cause chaos. But as long as you allow them in there, that's where the chaos comes. The African Union, I'm not going to blame external forces because we allow that to happen ourselves. If there are external forces at play that are hindering the integration of African and their policies, we are allowing that in the 21st century to happen to ourselves. I do not blame the West. I cannot. Because nobody come and force you to do what you don't want to do. It is our own greed. It is our own lack of political will. It's our own tribalistic, nepotistic tendencies that are hindering us from doing all this because some people are going to lose their personal interest. That is what it is. Because when you have a central policy, of course, the Nigerian Central Bank is going to relinquish its power. The MAC and their own central bank is going to relinquish its power. The custom network within those different countries that are going to relinquish their power because they're going to relinquish power in favor of a harmonized African custom system.
Okay.
So it is greed, it is lack of the political will, and it's because of fit tight authoritarian presidents that do not want
Okay.
anything good for Africa.
Let me come back to you, Professor Dr. Elijah. Professor Jagdish, I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, madam.
Good, good. I would like that you comment on what Dr. Elijah ENOAKU just highlighted now. It's about the external powers having infringing into the internal affairs of countries in Africa, and of course he made a statement which I want us to maybe elaborate more on. I do not blame the West, and so when we are conversant of the deals and of course policies that leaders have signed in the years, that today they are becoming aware that this engagement were not actually beneficial for the nations, and that's why in the multipolar world we are redefining perspectives. Do you actually share the same perspective with him regarding the Western influence in African countries and so on and so forth?
Yeah, yeah, madam. I, to a large extent, agree with Dr. Elijah's comments. You see, we have to begin from inside. Let the transformation be inside out, because you have to tackle the weaknesses of leadership, local governance deficit that is there. People are losing trust in their own leaders. That is that we must acknowledge it. That even in some places people are losing interest, even hope and trust in the governance systems like democracy itself. So why did we allow that to happen? Because of our own weaknesses, that we are always blaming West or the outside things, but we do not take care of our own weaknesses that are harping us. We need to eliminate corruption. We need to control internal strifes that are happening, the discrimination, the greed. That all has to happen. And simultaneously, we have to then nourish, we have to rebuild the trust, and let there be common goals, shared aspirations. Like we were talking about the education and skill development.
Absolutely.
I think we need to inculcate our young population into three ways, and I quote it as 3H. That is, we have to strengthen head, heart, and hands. Head, heart, and hands. A head with proper knowledge, proper education, ideas, and a positive mindset. Heart with self-belief, with values and ethics, with optimism, and with self-confidence, and hands with right kind of skills, technology, training, etc. So if we do it into these three ways, and when the our new generation comes up with all this empowerment, then they will not be the same as they will transform the African continent into a happening continent and realize its full potential that still remains untapped. So I think that is the option for the leaders to introspect and remove the weaknesses in their leadership and in their governance system. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Professor. Just to remind our viewers that this is Global Insight on For You Media Africa, and we are looking at the challenges faced by the African continent and how the impending AU Summit, 37th edition or session of the AU Summit, can bring practical solutions that will ensure peace, integration, development in Africa, and how can education education be used as a catalyst to attaining this milestone or objective. Now it's all about technology, digitalization. We are in the era of digitalization. Now, Professor Jagdish, let's continue with you. We're looking at how you said to be able to solve problems, we need to look at it from the internal aspect before taking it to beyond. And now we're looking at energy transfer. You mentioned the fact that technology transfer, beg your pardon. You also highlighted earlier on the need to develop the human capital, skills development. And we are aware that the number of crises occurring across Africa, it's due to the fact that according to some pundits, there's no employment, and these young people find themselves sometimes at the battlefields. They have guns all over the continent. So now we're looking at how we can curtail this, and through technology transfer and skills development, the African young people can be actually empowered. In this new wave of bilateral engagement, multilateral engagements, what practical technologies do you think can maybe India, Russia, France, Germany, and other countries engaging already with Africa can actually send that will adapt to the environment in Africa? You know, it's about bringing feasible solutions to the local population, which are adaptable.
Yeah, sure. I think India has a lot of skills as well as willingness to come to help of African people, and we can help a lot in skill development. Especially, this is an era of digitalization, and the basic problem that the whole world is facing is that more than 50% of the population, even in developed countries, they are digitally illiterate still. They don't have resources or the required training for that. So there is a vast digital divide, and perhaps we can help in that, in digital skills development, in medical side, into education and knowledge transfer, on management, on engineering, or biotechnology, or in any field. And personally, I would feel that if given an opportunity, I would like to contribute personally into their skill development and personality aspects. Uh, I take this opportunity to just show my one of my book. Uh, is it visible? Discover Yourself.
Indeed, yeah.
This has been printed into Latvia and translated into 8 European languages, including Spanish and French also. So what I have seen is that every person has immense potential to develop.
Indeed,
That is
yeah.
the difference between material and human resource. Material will remain like that or even rust away. But human resources, they have immense potential to develop themselves into any field of their choice, not necessarily technology only, any field. And that is what we need to provide our population, uh, including their raising their self-confidence into them, that yes, they do matter and they have an opportunity. So with that, I think Africa can seek collaboration from India and BRICS countries in many fields, and we'll all be willing to have it. In fact, I would say that self-reliance should be the goal of each region, each country, and that should not be seen as a nationalist slogan or a jargon or for economic reason only. Self-reliance is the ability to develop oneself, to solve our own problems, and look forward optimistically. So that is what is my point, and we can certainly look forward to it.
Thank you. It's about engaging in mutually beneficial relationships between the nations of the world. That is globalization. And of course, Dr. Ledger, let's understand the complexities of everything that is happening, and while bringing in diplomacy and, of course, international relations. Let's actually particularize with the continent Africa. You talked about what is needed for this peace and integration development to prevail in Africa. But you and I know that the continent presently is in chaos. We cannot ignore the happenings in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, in Goma, the fighting that has been ongoing. To think of that a very fertile but poor region actually going through what some have called genocide at the particular moment, and other countries across Africa that are in chaos. Let's navigate these complexities of this regional and crisis, and see how the African Union can foster meaningful dialogue and mediation to solve these disputes and promote sustainable peace. You are of the opinion that there is no meddling, especially Western meddling, in Africa. But then we saw recently the population manifesting and calling for the departure of foreign forces stationed in the region for years, which have not helped in the peace process. So how can we analyze these complexities, and then the role of the African Union in ensuring this meaningful dialogue and mediation to attain the peace that we need, that will in turn make the region fertile for foreign direct investment and, of course, development?
Before I answer your question, Tarish, I want to make sure that I am very clear on what I said, and I want to repeat it. It is true that the Western world is having an influence on the continent of Africa. There's no gainsaying about it. Yeah. But the point I made is that if you have your house and you do not allow somebody to come in there and sow chaos, it's not going to happen. The Western world does not come and force the hands of African leaders in order to implement whatever they are trying to do. They use our leaders. That's why I said it's our greed. It's our greed, it's our tribalism, it's our nepotism, and the things that are happening that they are manipulating in order to get into Africa. That's what I said. So let's be clear here. I blame Africans. We blame ourselves because we are the one allowing them to do whatever they're doing in Africa. We are the one allowing them to do whatever they're doing in Africa. I'll give you an example, Clarice, because sometimes when we speak like this, abstraction is let's go to concrete examples so that people understand.
Okay.
Gabon. I'll give you a few countries. Gabon, for example, which is just south of where you are, is a country that has been suffering in debt and all whatnot. You know, the Western world and France, the rest of the country manipulating and so on. And everybody was saying, this, that, Gabon is this, Gabon is that. Here we have a young man that just took over power. Brice Ngema or Ngena, what is his last name? Mm-hmm. He took over power. It took him 4 months to pay all the IMF debt, Clarice, as we speak. If you listen to the end of year speech, you align it to the nation. 4 months of being in power to pay all the IMF debt. Mm-hmm. We have another young man in Mali, Ibrahim Traore.
Yeah.
He took over power. It took him 5 months to issue an ultimatum and say, anybody that has stolen from the state treasury, you should bring the money back, or else you are going to be thrown to jail. And he brandished all the evidences that he had. It took 1 month for the state treasury to be filled with, I can't remember, billions. We have another young man that passed away in Tanzania, Magufuli.
Yeah, John
the country has been wallowing in debt. He came to power. It took him 6 years to cancel and rewrite all the contracts that they had with Belgium, France, United States, and all these other countries. He told them either we renegotiate or we cut off. You're not going to do anything to us. And they had to come back to the table. We even have another young man, or I should call him young man, or president in Rwanda. It didn't take him long. From 1994 to today, if you go to Rwanda and compare the Rwanda of 1994 and the Rwanda of today, you will be shocked about the pace of development. So my point still stands. It is the greed of African countries, refusal to do what is right for the people, that the Western world is taking advantage of. As long as we don't do that, we are going to be here for a very, very long time.
So we need intentional leadership in Africa, given the present perspectives.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Yeah, just to say regarding what you've said, all we need is intentional leadership across the African continent. Of course, leadership that puts the interest of the people first, like what we're seeing in Mali and other nations presently.
Correct. And the second part of your question, which you asked about Democratic Republic of Congo, let me give you a little bit of understanding of what's happening in Democratic Republic of Congo.
Sure.
We have what we call the M23. For those who have been following that conflict, the M23 are rebels that ran away from Rwanda in the days of the genocide. When they ran away from Rwanda, they helped Kabila to overthrow Mobutu. And when they overthrew Mobutu, they asked Kabila that he should integrate them into the army of the Congolese. There was an agreement. Now, after Kabila's overthrow in the action between Kagame and Tshisekedi and the M23, you know what they did? They rejected his peace proposal in favor of a Western negotiated or United Nations negotiated peace agreement.
Making it more problematic.
Now we are talking about African solutions to African problems. But who is that person who is rejecting African solution to African problems? We Africans as well. So who are you to blame? That's why I keep saying that our problem, us. That is where our problem is. Our problem is not the Western world. If you do not allow the Western world to come in, they will not come in. But we allow them to come in. We feel that our solutions have to be somewhere in Durban, in Washington, in France. That's where we go there to sit on the table to discuss the problems that are happening in Africa. And we cannot discuss it among ourselves. So again, until we come to a point where we realize that if you do not put your house in order, somebody who is coming to help you put in order is coming with an interest. And therefore, we will keep singing the same song, unfortunately.
And of course, that is the unfortunate situation about it. Dr. Elijah, you have made mention. I want us to look at now the place of political rhetoric around the African continent. Now we are looking at the AU summit that will be holding. The official opening was today with some dignitaries. So now we're looking at the AU summit that is zooming on peace, development, integration, and looking at education at a catalyst. Let's try to look at commensurate this with the willpower or political rhetorics in the country and see the way forward. What is the path forward regarding this? How can we change the narratives, especially on the political line, to be more intentional and to actually bring forth Africa's diplomacy in engaging with the problems of the continent and also the role of the external partners?
I'm not sure you're going to like my answer, but I'm still going to give it to you by the way.
Actually, it's not for me, but for the guest, you know.
Yeah, because I know some politicians are listening, because they might not love the answer that I'm going to give. But here's the thing, Taris. If I were the president or the Secretary General of the African Union, what is currently happening now in the African Union is chaos. This is where we're going to put the order. The African Union played a stick and I would call it fox and the deer game. They came out, there was a discussion in the African Union about making sure that they do not have sit-tight presidents in Africa. And those authoritarian oligarchs within the African Union manipulated their way, because the African Union is going to say, you cannot change the constitution of your country in order to run for a third term. All African presidents must have 2 terms. You can go and then run again, and then you want to come back. I mean, you go as civilian. So those presidents that did not want to relinquish power, they manipulated and they then changed the language of that agreement and said, if you change the constitution within 1 year, that it's something that is not the African Union should kick against. So what are these guys doing? They make sure that they change the constitution more than a year before they run for the presidency, and therefore they escape from that language. You see the manipulation. The language should be clear. Whether you do it 2 years or 3 years, all these presidents in Africa that are sitting tight and destroying the nation are not giving the way for young people with ideas. Because leadership, Larry, let me tell you something. Leadership is not more about what you know. When you inspire people, when you're able to inspire people, look at the way the Malians are rallying behind that young leader. All his policies, even though he's a military leader, who cares? Look at the way they rally him. That's somebody who aspires. That's somebody who inspires. That's somebody who has the heart of the people. Look at the way the Gabonese, when he came to power, what was the first thing that he did? One of the things he did is that he reduced the allowance and reduced the salary of all the parliamentarians and ministers and reduced it. That is how you aspire people to say that this guy has the nation at heart. But when you go there as a president, you promote thieves, you promote those who embezzle, you promote your colleagues, you encourage nepotism, you encourage tribalism, you bring people from your tribe and make them leaders, and the rest of the people are going to have. That is not how Africa is going to be run. As long as you are not giving hope to the young people, you are going to continue to see them go through the horrible Red Sea, trying to die in the desert in Libya and Egypt because they want to go to Europe. It is going to continue to happen. But when you give them hope, you aspire them, they want to stay there to make sure that they can make it in their country. That's where the problem is in Africa.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. ENOAKU. In the same perspective, Professor JAGDISH, we are looking at the issue of the leadership, and of course, Dr. Elijah made mention of the amendment of constitutions by some leaders. I want us to analyze this aspect in another perspective, looking at maybe diplomacy and the current geopolitical maneuver around Africa and of course the other countries in the world. You know, nations are carving their sphere of influence in Africa and this particular moment. We want to look at where it is necessary for a nation to alter the preamble of a constitution to ensure or to preserve, maintain the sovereignty of a nation, because it's sometimes when analyzing, it is imperative to also note the moment in a country where it is necessary to alter the constitution. I will take us to 2017, if I'm not making a mistake, where the population rallied behind President Paul Kagame and actually called for the amendment of a constitution because they were actually satisfied with the leadership. And in this present context of geopolitics and nations carving the sphere of influence, the game of interest, especially across Africa, and we see leaders that are being financed to be at the helm for the interest. You mentioned, Dr. Elijah, that we have greed and other things actually impeding the steady progress of Africa. For the interest of the party, let's understand when it is necessary for a country to amend a constitution, not trying to derail from our topic of discussion today, because all this winds down to ensuring peace, integration, development, and these are some of the distractions that Africa has today, making it difficult to attain peace, proper integration, and development.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing the global scenario, again, I would like to mention AI. Earlier, I mentioned AI as Africa and India, but now again, I will mention AI into different way, alliances and ideologies. You see, earlier alliances between nations were being made based on ideologies, but now things have changed. In the current world, AI is now different. Now AI is alignments based on interests, shared interests. So nations are aligning, making new alliances for serving their interests. And this has to be learned by African countries also. Like you see, for an example, India is having a lot of treaties with America. We are having very good relations in so many aspects. We are part of Quad also, I2, U2 also. And at the same time, we are having very good relations with Russia. We are buying oil from them and
Sure.
sustaining. So alignments based on shared interests. That is the new way of managing the things in the world. So there has to be the leadership of African Union and the countries has to see how they can align with different countries for serving their interests rather than just providing them rich resources which they are after the African resources, but they should also see what they can gain from these alignments. So that is one thing that should serve the African continent in a better way. Another thing that I would like to add is that with regard to leadership, you see, darkness is nothing but absence of light. And similarly, conflicts are nothing but absence of justice. When the fruits of development are not shared equally, it reduces trust and then there is rebellion. So greed has to be kept in check by the leaders. We need to inculcate right kind of leadership into young leaders with right kind of values and ethics. That spiritual input into education must come up right from beginning, so that new breed of leaders, they are away from corruption and conflicts and greed. So that will be the way out. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jagdish KHATRI. Thank you for your insight on our topic for discussion this day. And to you, Dr. Elijah ENOAKU, I want to appreciate your time and insight on trying to for us to understand the plethora of problems affecting the African continent and the practical solutions that can be applicable or feasible in the environment in which we live. Just one word, Mr. Dr. Elijah, before we culminate as leaders are meeting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia from tomorrow.
One word. Okay.
Indeed, one word or a statement, to
Yeah, yeah, I
summarize
understand.
it
I
all.
understand. Yes. There's hope in Africa. All hope is not lost. We are seeing pockets of evidence that all hope is not lost. So I want to encourage all the young people out there and all the students out there, university students, academic researchers, and everyone to say there is hope for Africa. Who ever knew that we are going to have a president in Gabon that can clear up all the IMF debt? Who even knew that we're going to have uh, a Kenya that has become the hub for IBM, Apple, all these conglomerates that are coming to Africa? Who ever knew that a genocide country like Rwanda is going to be a hub for industrialization in Africa? Who ever knew that? So there is hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed. And for the leaders that be at Addis Ababa, please think about the progeny. Think about your history. Think about what you're leaving behind for the people. History is going to judge some of you very harshly because of what you're doing. Think about the generation that's coming and make sure that you are working for their interests. Thank you, Clarice.
Indeed, working for the interest of Africans, and I think also of the leaders have actually realized the changing times, and they actually seen how they can be positive in ensuring and building a prosperous Africa for all. Thank you so much for your great analysis. I will beg for us to leave now, and to our televiewers for trusting the Pan-African television. We appreciate your time. Also, do have a lovely moment in the company of our transmissions. And it is on this note that we are going to draw the curtains in today's edition of Global Insight.